Joining me now is Fox News Senior Strategic Analyst General Jack Keane. General, it's good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, good to see you, Maria.
You know, he also said, we believe Israel should live in peace, which I thought was really interesting. Your take on the Crown Prince's comments this week?
Well, first of all, you know, you've been around the Crown Prince a couple of times, and so have I, and he's truly remarkable. He's a transformational leader. It's stunning that he's only 32 years old, because what he is doing to his country as well, its impact on the entire region is really quite extraordinary. This is a guy who's smart, passionate, and has an incredible amount of moral courage, and that's on display right here. Not so much in calling out the Iranians, which he sees as his #1 strategic threat, as the United States does in terms of impact on the Middle East, but talking about a two-state solution in Israel by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, that is really quite remarkable. We know for a fact, and we've talked about it here, that the relationship with the Sunni Arabs, and particularly Saudi Arabia and Israel, has grown closer through the years. And what's driving that relationship is clearly the threat from Iran. So this leader is speaking the truth, to be sure, and it's welcome news.
Yeah, and I mean, he also said, you know, that when I interviewed him in Riyadh last year, look, we want to live normal lives. We want to live lives like other normal people, the way we were living life before 1979 and the Iranian Revolution. So he's clearly calling out Iran and also befriending the United States. I mean, the White House is planning to approve this major arms deal with the Saudis worth $1 billion. The package includes 6,700 anti-tank missiles, as well as parts for American-made tanks and helicopters already in Saudi Arabia's arsenal. Remember that picture of the president with the Saudi prince next to him showing all the pictures of the arms sales? That was a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. And what the Crown Prince has been doing for 3 weeks, as you know, he's been on a tour across the United States, and a lot of that has been with American business leaders. Because clearly what he's trying to do, 70% of his country are 30 years of age and under.
That's incredible.
And he wants to put those people to work. And they have not been working. They've been on the dole, so to speak. And he wants them to have a productive life and contribute to Saudi Arabia. And he needs businesses to come to Saudi to establish plants, factories, and their entities in Saudi Arabia so his people can go to work. And that's one of the things he's been doing for the last 3 weeks, moving around the United States, also trying to, certainly to try to get his message out.
Which is why he's, you know, lowering the rules around women, allowing women to drive, allowing people to go to the movies. I spoke with the head of AMC, the movie theater, who's got the contract to build all these new movie theaters in Saudi Arabia. It feels like a new day there. Is he going to be able to get all this through? There are still a lot of clerics there who are pushing back and saying, no, we want to be much more conservative. We don't want this opening up of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, what's pretty stunning about it is that what you just mentioned is really a major, major issue, because Wahhabism, which is a far-right portion of the Islamic religion, which has been sort of the gateway to radical Islam for a number of years, and Wahhabism is indoctrination in many of the schools in Saudi Arabia, and they have supported politically the regime in Saudi Arabia, and he's pushing back on them. He wants to change that. He's taking that on. That is absolutely staggering, because he recognizes that Wahhabism has held back his society from growing and maturing and being an active part of the world, and he doesn't want to tolerate it anymore.
Yeah.
So it is amazing the change that he's impacting on his country.
And by the way, he understands the sensitivity around 9/11, obviously, given the hijackers were Saudis. He swears that those Saudis were trained by Iran and that the Saudi government is with the United States.
Well, there's no doubt about the fact that we are on a clash with the Iranians. He's there with us. We've got to support the Sunni Arabs in doing that. I mean, clearly he's spoken out unequivocally about the Iranian deal that the Obama administration has made and how bad a deal that was.
Right.
He's actually providing a pathway, I think, and making it easier if President Trump and his advisors are going to pull out of that deal come May, when the certification comes up again, by sort of nodding his approval of that.
And you said you don't think the president renews it on May 12th unless it's fixed, unless it's a different deal. You've said that in the past.
Yeah, our diplomats from the State Department have been working with the Europeans now for weeks, trying to fix this deal. And if they can fix it, then I think the president will probably certify it. But the ability of the Europeans to truly make the kind of substantive change that needs to be made is unlikely, because the Europeans, let's be honest about it here, they want to do business with the Iranians.
Yeah.
They've got major deals going with them ever since the sanctions were removed, and it's unlikely they'll make the kind of sweeping changes that deserve to be made.
Yeah, we'll see. I guess if I were a betting woman, I might say he does not renew it, but we'll see what they come up with. Let me turn to Russia, General, because a possible sign of thawing tensions here. What do you make of the fact that the White House is confirming that the president proposed a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin during their phone conversation last month? White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders released a statement. She says this: the two had discussed a bilateral meeting in the not-too-distant future at a number of potential venues, including the White House. Just days after the call, though, the U.S. expelled dozens of Russian diplomats over that poisoning of a former spy in Britain. Do you think a formal meeting between these two will happen?
I think it's likely, because I think they both want it to happen. And both leaders recognize, as do their policy advisors, that the relationship between our two countries has been comparable to what it was during the Cold War. It's at a very low level right now. And so and the president has been conspicuous in his absence of criticizing Putin personally. Our government and our administration's policy is certainly confronting Russia, no doubt about it, taking a stronger stand than his predecessor did. But I think I have a theory about this. I believe the president knows that Putin's a thug and a bully. I think he believes that Putin manipulated his three predecessors and had his way with them. And I think he's itching to get in the room with him, Maria.
Really?
And just sit down and talk to him, because he's been around people like this in his own business life, you know, that are arrogant.
Even though we know that they meddled in the election, they're trying to meddle in elections across the world, Europe included. That we know that Britain says, yes, it was only the Soviet Union who had access to that nerve gas, and yes, they poisoned the former spy and his daughter. With all of that, you think the president does, in fact, invite him to the White House and has him at the White House?
Well, I don't know where they're going to meet, but I think it's healthy that they talk. And I'm confident the president will put down on a table what his objections are and his concerns about Putin and what his country's been doing. I think he wants to see if it's possible for us to find some common ground and sort of tone down the tension that we have between our two countries and not let it get out of hand. And so I think that's what this is really about. And he has confidence that a personal relationship can possibly lead to better things, even though there's major policy disagreements. It's unlikely that Putin is going to change, to be frank about it, because he hasn't changed with any of the president's predecessors. But I still think it's worthy for them to sit down and talk. It's much better doing that than throwing arrows at each other and having major policy confrontations. At least they can discuss the major issues.
Wow, incredible. General, great insights as always from you. Thanks so much.
Good talking to you, Maria.
You too. General Jack Keane.